Our next speaker knows only too well how lives can be changed in an instant. Dave Buckwald is a 9-year MDRT member with 2 core-to-the-table and 6 top-of-the-table qualifications. He is obviously very good at what he does, but nothing could have prepared him for the day he truly learns what it means to be a life insurance agent. Please welcome Dave Buckwald.
It was a beautiful sunny Tuesday morning in September 2001. I'd already experienced a big life change that year, being recently married for only 18 days to my beautiful wife, Jennifer. But the bigger change, the total alteration of how I could ever know and see my world and our place in it, that was yet to be. Almost 7 years ago, newly married, we had just returned from our honeymoon. I was driving toward a client's office in northern New Jersey. Traffic was moving okay, so I was preparing and visualizing the outcome. But then the car radio broke in. A plane had hit one of the towers of the World Trade Center. At first I thought it had to be a commuter plane, but no, the tower was burning. I remember thinking, no, please no, not the North Tower. Not the North Tower where Cantor Fitzgerald had its offices on the 104th and 5th floors. Cantor Fitzgerald was one of the largest brokerage firms on Wall Street, and also my largest client. I had 51 individual clients working on those floors, 51 friends, 51 people whose dreams I knew about. All of them had individual disability coverage with me, and of those, 30 had individual life insurance policies with me. Please, please, not the North Tower. But of course it was the North Tower, and then the South Tower. And just like that, one bright sunny day in September, my whole world became something different from anything I had ever known. I spent most of the day, like many people here, perhaps like many of you today, reaching out to those closest to us, calling family and friends, and worrying about the ones we could not reach. Where was my brand new brother-in-law, Bob? He took the train to Manhattan every day and got off at the World Trade Center. Where was he now? All morning we couldn't reach him on his cell phone. And finally we got through to him around 2:30 p.m. He reached the station a little earlier that day and was out of the building and on his way when the first plane hit. Watching the TV news that afternoon, almost afraid to look away from the screen before the world changed again, wondering was there any way we could help. Late that afternoon, we went to the local blood bank and saw one of the longest lines we had ever seen. Everyone was looking for a way to help, something to do, something that could make a difference. Through it all, I was thinking and praying for my friends and clients at Cantor Fitzgerald, wondering where were they? How were they? Late that night, I laid my appointment book on the kitchen table at home to see what I already knew was there. I was exhausted, but I had to look. 6 appointments scheduled for the next day, Wednesday morning, September 12th, 2001. All of them on the 105th floor of the North Tower, World Trade Center. Jen, look at this, I said. But there were no words. I just pointed to the appointment lines for the next day. And she covered her mouth. And later that night, we talked a lot about how after only 18 days of marriage, we had come within 24 hours of my new wife becoming my widow. I look at our 2 beautiful children today, Jack and Morgan, and think back. Just 24 hours. Sometimes I find myself staring at them when they're playing or sleeping, and a tear will run down my cheek. And think back, just 24 hours. We plan our lives so carefully, especially in this business, but sometimes it's just luck. And we can only wonder, and sometimes maybe just say, thank you. We all remember the next day, Wednesday morning, the day that came after. The world still looked the same, but it was different. Our lives were different. Everything was different. Everything away from what they were already calling ground zero looked the same, but nothing could ever be the same ever again. And then I took a call from a friend of mine with the Cantor Fitzgerald office in London. He'd been on a conference call with the New York office when the first plane hit. And he'd listened on the line until the phone went dead. And then he told me what he heard and what some of my friends and clients went through in those final minutes. After that, word seemed to get around the office pretty quickly that I wasn't doing real well. Finally, my manager came down to my office and closed the door behind him. And for a few minutes, he just listened while I cried and tried to tell him what had happened. Finally, he interrupted me. He said, "Listen to me, Dave. This is what we do. This is what we are paid to do, and this is why it matters. I've been to a lot of funerals in my day, and everyone is sad when it happens too soon. Everyone wants to be there. We all want to help. But we are the people who walk in with a check and say to a grieving widow, 'You're going to be okay.' Nothing can ever replace him, but this will cover your future. This will pay for your future and for your children's future. See, this check represents something, and so does the policy that brings it to you. It's a symbol of the love your husband had for you and your children. When our clients sign on those dotted lines, we promise we will take care of their families. Now it's time for you to start taking care of those families." And so I did. But living through those days, those weeks, those months was not easy. It was a time in my life I will never forget. Sometimes I wish that I could. There's a saying in this business that you never truly understand it, the work we do, until we deliver our first death claim. Wednesday morning, September 12th, 2001, I was faced with 30 death claims. I spent most of the next 3 months hand-delivering 30 checks to young widows and attending way too many memorial services. Most of those death claims were for men who would never turn 40. So until 9/11 was over, maybe I didn't really understand the meaning of the work that we do. But on September 12th, I began to learn and understand more than I ever wanted to know. I saw how life insurance provided money when it was needed, and needed quickly by the families. So they did not have to go to the Red Cross to cover a mortgage payment, or to a father-in-law to cover a grandchild's tuition payment. A father-in-law who was likely still raging in his own grief. In those last months of 2001, I stood face to face with 30 young widows, most of them with at least one young child, and handed out over $30 million in life insurance benefits.